Hey, thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah, it's exciting to be here. I'm broadcasting from Boston, even though I'm from Detroit. But so let's get right into it. I'm starting with Chet Amud Aleph, 8a. We're still
Okay.
reeling. What's that? Is that okay?
Sorry, I thought you didn't translate Chet Aleph, and I did. And sorry, ignore me. Oh,
8a, got it. We're still, I guess, being inspired from that first Mishnah about cutting the talit, the garment in half. So, what about, is it really cutting the garment in half? Let's say it's made out of gold. Yes, maybe it is. Maybe it's an animal. But eventually they say, an animal you can't cut in half. It all reminds me of the King Solomon story of cutting the baby in half, that you really cannot do that. I guess, though, one opinion thought you could. I guess Solomon did not rule according to that woman. And then we get into this great idea of, and spend a lot of time, we'll come back to it, of zachin, of that you can acquire something on behalf of someone else if you acquire it yourself. This is actually done sometimes on Shabbat. Technically, you're not supposed to give a gift. Now, if you bring some food or wine or something for the meal, that's fine. But like when the rabbi, let's say, gives the bar or bat mitzvah kid a gift, a siddur or a prayer book or a Bible or whatever it is, I've seen that some people, before Shabbat, they give it to someone else who acquires it on behalf of the bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah kid. So that's a very important thing. Zachin, we'll come back to it a little bit in a couple of minutes. And then there's going to be a lot of talk about, the Mishnah opened with sort of finding something, but there's going to be a lot of talk about acquiring, of course, and stealing. It seems like stealing was sort of part of their culture, and not that it was approved of, but that it happened. There's a lot of stealing here, and one thing that I find charming. And by the way, I think in Bava Metzia, we got there's so many cases, but some of them are just really charming. The Shutfin Shiganvu, the partners in crime. So it's not just one person, but it's a partnership in crime. And it talks about their kind of rulings. Then we get to really on 8b, on Chet Amud Bet, a lot of fun with the donkey. Who is acquiring the donkey? The person riding the donkey, the person pulling the donkey. Who's more in charge of that donkey? We actually we learn it from kil'ei behema, from mixing animals, that you're not supposed to have the Bible says not to plow with with a bull and a donkey or something, different kinds of animals, because they move at different paces. So there's even a kindness to animal element here. With that, maybe the donkey is pulling faster than the bull, and then the bull is being pulled along unfairly. So there's even a sensitivity towards animals in this halacha of kil'ai, but it's a serious law from the Torah, and that helps us know. So if you're riding, the question is, if you're pulling the bull and the donkey together, is that what makes you liable for this prohibition of kil'ei behema, of mixing animals in plowing, or if you're riding them? So that's sort of our connection to acquiring, like what's more significant, what's more control over the animal. Then we talk about, well, are you talking about a donkey or are you talking about a camel? Hamor gamal, donkey, camel. Reminds me of Fiddler on the Roof. It was a horse, it was a mule, it was a horse, it was a mule. So I don't know if, look, the scholars, when they're learning this, are they laughing? I think that there's some humor, like, okay, donkey, you say donkey, I say camel, different. So I think there is a little bit of flavor being brought in here, but anyway, that's a big issue. The other issue is riding the donkey in the city. It doesn't, because it says on 9a, Lefi she'ein darkan shel bnei adam lirkov ba'ir. The way of people is not to ride donkeys in the city. I guess it was a no riding zone in the city. You couldn't ride your donkey. It's kind of like those electric bikes that people ride on the sidewalk. They drive, especially in Israel, drives people crazy that or bicycles on the sidewalk. We had a congregant who was probably in his late 80s, 90s. He rode a tricycle, and one of those adult tricycles on the sidewalk. And if people yelled at him, he'd say, "My mommy won't let me ride in the street." So, but in any case, the point is that you don't acquire the donkey when you're riding it in the city, because that's not the normal way of your relationship with a donkey. You don't normally ride. So the important principle here is kani kedero shebnei adam konin. You acquire it the way that people in general acquire things. Now, if you're an important person, or I guess a woman, or an unimportant person, an Enish Zila, if you're a nobody, then you can ride in the city. So only kind of average people don't ride their donkeys, but people who would have a Cadillac or Rolls Royce or Bentley, they can ride their donkey. And the normal way is they do ride their donkeys. Or if you're a nobody, I kind of like the way that there's sort of an evening of the lowest rungs and the highest rungs here. Now, there's now we get into the idea of, does your courtyard help you acquire? If something's done in your courtyard, and can you acquire anything that's in these? Something falls into your courtyard. And then they ask about something which I don't know where they come from, a chatzer mehalechet, a moving courtyard. So I don't know. I didn't look it up in all the commentaries what they're talking about, but it's like a moving sidewalk, a moving courtyard. But they do say that a boat is not a moving courtyard. So a moving courtyard cannot acquire. It doesn't acquire because it's sort of on the move. But a boat is considered sfina menach naicha. A boat is considered statutory, well, not statutory, but staying in the same place, static. Because Matule, the water is moving it. So, kind of when you look out of a boat, you see the water moving, right? When you're in a ship and you look down, the water is moving. It's all relative. It's very Einsteinian. So the ship is considered staying in place, and it's the water is moving it. So a ship would do it. We kind of slip into the idea of fields, and even the law of payah, that you're supposed to leave a little bit of your field left behind. So that they kind of slips into it. But on 10a, we get to a very important concept of that the 4 cubits of a person acquire for them. Amot arba amot. First of all, it's introduced by, really love this name. This is 10a. Reish Lakish, we're familiar with him. Mishum Abba Cohen Bardola. Abba Cohen Bardola. He's saying in the name of, I don't know who he was, but Papa Cohen Bardola. So what does he say? That the very important principle, the Arba Amot Shel Adam Konod Lo B'chol Makom, the 4 cubits of a person help them and allows you to acquire in every place. What's the reason why your 4 cubits around you? So if something falls within your 4 cubits in general, and you say, that's mine, you get it, even if you don't pick it up. Why? Delo, and this is a principle we'll get to again, Delo leituli insuye. We don't want people to fight about things. So everyone needs their space. You get their 4 cubits. Now, I fly whenever, on the plane, you don't get 4 cubits in general, unless you're, like those people riding the donkeys in the city that are very wealthy, you get first class, even then. But theoretically, you get 4 cubits. But even on a plane, it's very important that you have your space. So your space, even if it's less than 4 cubits, is very important. But we talk about if you fall on it, you can lose this law of having your 4 cubits if you fall on it. And the question is, we get on 10b, concept of where was, where was the object? Was it in your courtyard again? But interesting, important concept is introduced of ein shliach lidvar avera on 10b, that you can't tell someone, if you tell someone to do an avera, a sin, they're not your whatever, your messenger anymore, and they cannot acquire for you, and they can't do things for you if you're asking them to do something sinful, like to steal. Now, it talks about maybe women and slaves, they don't have their own money. Sometimes it's a discussion, but they might not be liable for stealing if they're not going to acquire it themselves anyway. Let's move along to 11a. And that's an interesting idea. And there's a little bit of Gittin. We're going to come back in a couple of minutes. There's a little bit of from tractate Gittin in this tractate, Bava Metzia, because a lot of Gittin about the laws of divorce is about acquiring that document. And you recall that document falling, he throws it in his soon-to-be ex-wife's yard that acquires. So there's a lot of, they're talking about Yalfinan Mitzia Miget. Can we learn the laws of acquiring something you find from the laws of a get, of a divorce? I mean, in that document and holding on to that and finding it. And then another opinion, and we don't know who says what, says, no, we don't. So it's kind of interesting that you can make analogies or not. And then we get to more fun in the Mishnah about wild animals. Your field does not acquire a wild animal if it's running through it. But if it's kind of like trapped in some ways, it does. And then there's a difference between a field, a chatzar hamishtameret, a secured courtyard, one that's fenced in, one that's not fenced in. And so, I mean, these are all issues that neighbors face, really, about, putting a fence in their courtyard or not. Then on from the bottom of 11a to the top of 11b is a great Rabban Gamliel story. We remember Tractate Brachot way back in the beginning had a story of Rabban Gamliel and his children. They came back late from the party or a wedding. Lots of Rabban Gamliel stories. Very controversial, colorful character. And this is the Rabban Gamliel of Yavne, the one that gets in trouble, that gets impeached, and the one that embarrasses Rabbi Yoshua. But interesting, in this story, they're on a boat. Remember, that boat is considered not moving or whatever, but this really isn't about the boat. It's about acquiring stuff on land when they're on a boat. Similar kind of story that comes up when it deals with chametz from Tractate Psachim, also about, can I sell my chametz even though I'm on a boat and Passover is coming in soon, it's Erev Pesach, and I want to sell my chametz that's in my house. So similar kind of thing. So what he does, he says, Asor shani ati limod natun li Hoshua. So I'm going to give my meiser, my tithes, to Yoshua. And the idea is that to Rabbi Yoshua. So it's interesting. The idea is enable him to eat food, and he can't give that 10% tithes right here, but he's going to do it remotely. So for me, the neat thing is that he says, I'm going to give it to Yoshua, who he respects, who he loves, even though later on they're going to get, or not later on, earlier in Brachot, we saw that big fight because he embarrassed Rabbi Yoshua. On 11b, we also get to so the point of that story is that you can effect an acquisition in your yard or your field, even though you're not there, even though you're on a boat. So, it seems to work. But it's not so much that you own that tithe, because that really goes to the poor people and it goes to the Levite. But it's that you have tovat hana'ah. This is such a great concept you have the right of giving it away, the benefits of pleasuring someone else. So in other words, it's not going to be yours, but you can choose who you give your tithes to. You can choose who you give your truma to, your priestly tithes also. And that gives you a lot of power, and people have to be nice to you because they want to get your stuff. And it's a little bit like, in a negative way, it's sort of politicians. Sometimes they will, use their ability to give jobs out, but they ask for favors. So there's a question. So what Rabban Gamliel really is doing, he doesn't own that tithe, but really what he's doing is it's a concept of that he owns the pleasure of deciding who to give it to. So it's not clear that's the same thing. We'll resolve it, that's still a discussion. But on 12a, here we come to something just so important, that a divorce document is gabe get hula, going back to the divorce. It's in general considered something not good for the woman, because she's going to be divorced. That's the way it is in Judaism. It's not, it's not an equal kind of thing. It's that the man's saying, I don't want you anymore. That's the way the Torah puts it. So in general, it's considered. So this law that we had before of zachin la'adam shelo b'fanav, that I can acquire, that siddur for the bar mitzvah boy or the bar mitzvah girl, I can acquire it on behalf of them by me acquiring that. That's a zchut, because everyone wants that siddur, everyone wants that gift. But if it's something negative, like a get, I can't acquire it on behalf of the woman, because she won't necessarily at least want it. She might want to fight it. And this gets us to a powerful idea that Rav Simcha Kraus of blessed memory, a real tzaddik, he started the International Beit Din, which tries to help women and men who want to get divorced and their partner is not cooperating to make it happen. And one of the techniques that I don't think they use, but in theory is zikoi haget, is that when the man doesn't want to give a get, give that document, it might be for bad reasons. This man, whatever, should give his wife a get. If the court determines, let's say he's an abusive husband, and the court says, you have got to give a get. Normally, they can't force him to give a get, but they can do, according to this theory, zachin. So they can write up the get, someone can lift the get and acquire it on behalf of the husband. The husband says, I don't want to give my divorce. I don't want to give it. But our rabbis say that deep down, even though the man is an abusive man, whatever, says, I don't want to give it, deep down, his little neshama, his little soul knows that he should give it. So it's really a zchut to acquire that is really a good thing, even though he might say, I don't want to acquire it. So anyway, it's a theory. It's still discussed, but it's something, that involves the get. And that goes back to these laws of acquisition, that I can acquire something on behalf of someone else if it's good for them, if it's a zchut. And of course, going from that big concept to throwing something through someone else's airspace is on 12a. So it goes from over their yard, but doesn't stop in their yard. Do they acquire it? And then we get an interesting question. Well, what about, I know, Claudette, you have a question. I just plow through this. I think you'll have to write it, and maybe Dr. Scheinerman will answer the question. But I don't know, Rachel, do you want me to stop or?
I leave that up to presenters if they want to take questions or not.
Okay. Let me take one question. Claudette, because your hand is up. Okay, maybe it was
Rabbi, quickly. I just wanted to ask a specific question on the point that you made about the get. how that
Yes.
rabbis have an alternative that they can, someone else has to acquire it and the woman gets a get. Why isn't that practice? Because in Toronto, there are a lot of people who are not getting their get.
Wow, Claudette, thank you. That was a great question. Thank you.
Claudette always asks good questions.
Oy vey chatanu. This issue of a get, all what I can say, Claudette, is that the International Beit Din has helped over 100 women, but not necessarily with this technique. But I think what it is that a lot of the women are afraid to go to the International Beit Din because they're afraid that their get will not be accepted by the general public. So there's that idea. All I can say, and as a quick answer, Claudette, is that we're on record here, being recorded. I am very saddened that the Orthodox community has not moved further and faster on the idea of divorce. There are a lot of different ideas. The old idea that was suggested by Rabbi Rackman and Simcha Weinberg of hafka'at kiddushin, of retroactively annulling the marriage in the first place, that was suggested, and that's been rejected. And I know God bless them, my Rebbe, the Soloveitchiks, did not like that. And it's a famous fight in an RCA convention. I hold the Orthodox has to move further, and I was as helpful as I possibly could. So when Rabbi Simcha Kraus came out with his Beit Din, I organized a group, wasn't made public, but I organized over 100 rabbis that said, Orthodox rabbis, we accept any get that Rabbi Simcha Kraus's Beit Din approves of. So, Claudette, I don't have a great answer for you, but I share your frustration. On the other hand, what I'll say is that the halachic process is one that you have to convince the group, the rabbis of your time, that it's legitimate. And for some reason, whether it's hafka'at kiddushin, retroactively annulling, whether it's zikoi haget, whatever it is, they have not successfully convinced the bulk of rabbis. And so that's the way the system works. So while I really feel they should be pushing faster and more, I'm Orthodox and I'm part of that system. So, okay, let's get to the next one. Rolling versus flying. What works with that? And also we have on 12a, can a child be konet, acquire something from the Torah? And it seems, yes, they can. Then I love this. I like the animals that are brought in here. So it's sort of a side issue, but you're not allowed to bring a lion into your field. Can a person have a lion in their field to scare off all the poor people that want to come and glean from the gifts that you're supposed to give to the poor people? So no, you're not allowed to do that. You have to have open access in general to poor people. 12b, we get to an issue of Delo Leitele Ava. They're not supposed to. We don't want people, husband and wife, to be angry with each other. We're going to come back to this. I know we have 5 minutes, but we'll get back to this when it comes to Tikkun Olam that's coming up. Then, okay, look, 13a, 14, 15, we get to the whole idea of you find a document, do you return? It seems kind of strange. Like, of course, it's a mitzvah to return something lost, but a lot of it is about, like, if you find it in the garbage can, or you find this, maybe it was meant to be dumped out. That's the point. So maybe it was meant to be. And then we have a whole idea of who's going to vouch for this document. Sometimes the witnesses can vouch for the document. And if you return a document, it might be misused by the creditor. Sometimes something's in the garbage, keep it in the garbage. I know there's a whole legal question in America. Do you own, when you throw something in the garbage and it's out to be collected, you still have ownership of it. which is an issue coming up in a month and a bit about Passover. When we throw out our chametz, we still kind of own it. That's why you really have to sell your chametz, or really, even if it's in the garbage, you got to get rid of it. So, and in the end, one opinion is that even if both the lender and the creditor and the borrower and the creditor agree that this was a good document, don't return this document. It can make things very complicated. So it's so interesting that things could be, sometimes you don't try to fix the situation. You cause more harm in fixing the situation than in not. There is an idea that even though a guarantee is not mentioned, achrayut, it's a toad sofer who. The person writing the document and didn't say that this deal is guaranteed because of from the land or whatever. That's a mistake, but it's there. This is a similar halacha to ketubah. If you write a ketubah and you make a mistake in it, that marital document is still in effect, even though it was a mistake. People will look at it and say, who's the rabbi who wrote this ridiculous ketubah or made that mistake? So that's why rabbis don't want to make mistakes in the ketubah, but it is still valid. So 14b, that's yesterday, tikkun olam, this very important idea of repairing the world. It talks about, it's sort of a very technical issue of things you cannot appropriate, but you cannot take from fixed things. But the main idea that I wanted to get here is that the understanding of tikkun olam here is kind of like for the betterment of the world and for society to move smoothly. So, it's always an argument. What does tikkun olam really mean? And there's a Kabbalistic meaning to it, and there's a Talmudic meaning to it. And this goes back to Gittin, where it's mentioned several times. It seems to be tikkun olam is to allow things in society to move smoothly, to operate smoothly. And sometimes if you do something that might be even technically, theoretically legal, but it'll disturb things in society, you don't do it, which in some ways is like the opposite of revolution. The tikkun olam is changing. It's almost like evolution, changing the world and making sure it runs smoothly, but not revolutionizing things. Today's daf, it's 15, Dr. Schneierman, this is today is 15. I hope it's 15. I hope I'm right. So today's daf you're going to look at, but there is a really interesting idea of fields going up in. Okay, thank you. Fields going up in price and going up in value. You'll see on 15b this thing, Maisim b'chol yom. This idea, someone in the Beit Midrash or making up this Talmud says, you see this all the time. So that's like an interesting argument against, there's so much theory in Bava Metzia and the Talmud, and then sometimes you get mice, look at what's going on. And then great question that people don't give gifts to people that aren't their relatives. I don't know if we have that. And we'll see also coming along in the next day or two or three that there was an incident in Pumbedita where Rav was ruled one way and they ruled the other way. And the whole idea here is that this is an ongoing discussion. And so good luck as you continue your Daf Yomi into next week and the weeks ahead and continue the discussion.
Amazing. The Daf Yomi, we always tell people, part of it's like drinking from a fire hose. We don't try and get everything. We just try and hit highlight. You really try and get everything. And it's amazing what you can pack into 30 minutes, Rabbi Lopatin. Really amazing. Thank you all of you for coming and joining us today and learning with us. And we look forward to continuing with you tomorrow morning in your inbox and in this space in 1 week as we continue our journey through Bava Metzia. Everybody have a Shabbat Shalom and a wonderful week. It was good to see you. Thank you again, Rabbi Lopatin.
Thanks, Shabbat Shalom, and keep the lions out of your fields. Take care.